Today on Passion for Food, by special request, I'll be showing you how to make these delicious caramel apple cinnamon rolls. This was a subscriber request from TTV Mr. Meme, and I'll put a link to their channel down in the description. Let's go ahead and get started. So to make the dough for our cinnamon rolls, we're going to go in with 1 cup of hot milk. That should be about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If you can't stick your finger in there without it hurting, it's too hot. To that, we're going to add about 6 tablespoons of grass-fed butter, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, about 1 tablespoon or 1 packet of this fast-rising or instant yeast. Because it's the instant yeast, we don't have to bloom it first. We can just add it in and get mixing right away. 2 large eggs at room temperature. And speaking of mixing, I'm going to be using my dough hook attachment for this, and I'm going to go ahead and get mixing and add in my flour gradually. We're going to need about 4 cups total, so I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 cups and go ahead and get that mixing. Doing it this way just gets things mixed in more evenly and prevents us from adding too much flour accidentally. Things were looking good here, so I'm going to go ahead and add the second half of our flour. I find rather than focusing on exact amounts of ingredients, it's easier to focus on what the final dough ball should look like and just work towards that goal. I actually forgot the vanilla earlier, so we're going to sneak in about 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla real quick here. And as you can see here, I don't so much have a dough ball as I have a kind of loose batter. If that happens, what we're going to do is add 1 tablespoon of flour at a time until we have the consistency we're looking for. Which you can see here. You can see the dough is pulling away from the sides and forming a ball nicely. It's slightly sticky, but it shouldn't cling right to your hands. Once we have the consistency we're going to pull it off the hook and then give it a final kneading for about 5 minutes until it's silky smooth and slightly stretchy. This helps develop the gluten, which will give us that beautiful pull-apart texture that we all know and love in our cinnamon rolls. And after 5 minutes, you should definitely notice a change in texture. It'll be a little less sticky because the flour has fully hydrated, and it'll be a lot smoother and silky. So at this point, what we want to do is coat it in a thin layer of oil, and we're going to let this prove for about an hour. This is what we in the business call an enriched dough because of the eggs, butter, milk, and sugar, so it's going to take a little longer to rise than your normal bread dough. And while our dough is proving, we can go ahead and make our filling, which is super simple, consisting of 1 cup of packed brown sugar and about 2 tablespoons of ground cinnamon. The molasses from the brown sugar is what's going to give us that kind of caramel apple taste to our final cinnamon rolls. And I'm just going to beat that up with a whisk until it's all nicely combined and I've gotten rid of all the big lumps of brown sugar. But that's it for our filling. And after about an hour, you can see our beautiful dough has doubled in size. So we're just going to knock the air out of that and get it rolled out. And to make things easier on ourselves, instead of using flour to roll it out, we're actually going to use oil. That way it actually rolls out a lot quicker and we don't risk incorporating extra flour into the dough that we really don't want. We want this to be nice and tender. So we want to thoroughly oil our work surface and our rolling pin. It might feel a little weird pouring oil on your countertop, but trust me, this is the easiest way to do this. So once we have our surfaces thoroughly coated, we are going to roll out our dough. We want to keep this fairly rectangular, and we're aiming for about 12 by 24. Our final dough should be about 1/4 inch thick. The dough is still going to be pretty sticky, which is another reason why the oil helps us out here so much. And once we're happy with that, it's time to go on with our filling. So we're just going to pour on our sugar cinnamon mixture and get that as evenly spread out as we can. Once we're happy with that, we're going to drizzle on about 6 tablespoons of salted butter. I think the salted butter works well here because you get that kind of a salted caramel flavor in the final rolls. You could, of course, brush this on before you add the sugar, which is what I meant to do, but I got my order of operations a little mixed up here, but that's no big deal. And last but not least, we're going to grate our apple directly onto our roll here. Just to make things easy, we want to grate from the bottom. We don't have to worry about the core at all. If you see a couple of stray seeds getting in there, definitely try and remove those. I'm using 2 Fiji apples here today, but just about any kind of apple will work for this. I wound up using 2 small apples, but you can use as much or as little apple as you like. We just want to get this as evenly spaced as we can. Now that we have that evenly distributed, let's get rolling. Starting from either end, we just want to roll it up on itself, trying to remove as much air as possible. So we're just going to keep rolling, rolling, rolling until we have that all finished. At this point, get a 9 by 13 baking dish ready, and you want to grease that just lightly. Ultimately here, what we're looking for is 12 cinnamon rolls, so the easiest thing to do is to first separate this into thirds. I'm just going to trim off the ends real quick first, so our rolls come out as evenly as possible. And I'm going to score the dough just to make sure I'm getting my pieces as evenly as I can. I was happy with how that looked, so we're going to go ahead and cut the dough into thirds. And from there, it couldn't be easier. We're just going to cut each third in half and then in half again, and we'll wind up with 12 equal parts for our cinnamon rolls. The ones on the end might be slightly smaller, but don't worry, nobody's going to notice that. As we're laying these in our pan, there should be a bit of a gap between them. We don't want to overcrowd the pan. You'll notice some liquid seeping out from the apples and the sugar and the butter, but that's okay. That's actually a good thing. More on that in a minute. You can see there's a little bit of room between them. We need that because we're going to cover these and let them rise again for about 30 minutes. After those 30 minutes, you can see they've expanded and filled up most of that room, and you can actually see that liquid down in the pan. That's what's going to make these caramel apple cinnamon rolls. So we're going to go into a 350-degree oven for about 30 minutes. And this is where the magic is going to happen with those juices from our apples and sugar. As it bakes, those juices are going to reduce down and then caramelize onto the bottom of the rolls, giving it that beautiful caramel apple flavor. So here we are after 30 minutes, and you can see they're lightly golden brown on top. So let's set these aside for just a minute and make the icing, which is going to consist of about a cup of confectioner's sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, and 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk. We just want to whisk that together until we have a consistency that we like. I wound up using slightly too much milk, so I wound up adding probably about another half a cup of confectioner's sugar. You want this to be fairly thick, but still pourable. Once we're happy with the texture, it's time for the fun part. We're just going to drizzle our frosting right on top of our warm cinnamon rolls. You do want to do this while the rolls are warm, or the texture won't be quite right. So we're just going to drizzle this on as evenly as we can. You can certainly use more or less depending on how sweet you want these. But that's it. Our caramel apple cinnamon rolls are ready to enjoy. So let's get one on a plate and just look how delicious these rolls came out. It's a little golden brown but still tender, and you can see those caramelized juices on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one in half so you can see that beautiful filling we have distributed through the inside. And I have to say, these really came out perfect, so I hope you give them a try soon. So, what foods are you passionate about? Is there something you'd like to see me prepare next? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, give me a thumbs up below and consider subscribing and hitting that little bell to be notified of our future episodes. This has been Graham with Passion for Food.